Hello! As you may or may not know, because why would you know, this year I was able to visit my beautiful country of Colombia. I haven't been there in over 10 years, so it was a really emotional experience for me. I did a sort of recap of my journey there, however, I did talk about the fact that not only was I able to visit some of the cities and places that I already knew and I loved, but also I was able to visit new beautiful places. And today I want to talk to you about one of those. So we're gonna start with San Andres. Before I show you some of the footage, I want to say two things. First of all, the footage is messy because I did not exactly plan this there. I just filmed and took pictures as one does when you're a tourist. And later I kind of realized, I kind of want to share this, so I'm going to use the footage that I can, which is not perfect, so I'm sorry for that, but I still wanted to share it. And second, before we get into that famous footage, I want to talk a little bit about the history of the place. So, the whole name would be San Andres Providencia in Santa Catalina. It is a conglomerate of islands positioned in the Caribbean Sea. Technically, they are closer to Central America, however, they are part of Colombia. These are coral islands, and the Caribbean Sea is also known as the Seven Colored Sea because it gets these beautiful tones, really, really beautiful. Now, the first time the island was recorded was in 1527 by the Spanish. However, throughout the years, a lot of movements from various groups move on the island. You have Spanish, like I said, you have the English, the Dutch, the French, the Scottish, the Irish, and even a lot of Middle Eastern people. Important because, well, all of these movements usually leave something on the places that they stay. And we'll see some of that later. In particular, the English brought the slavery trade, mainly for lumbering and the growing of cotton and tobacco. And after the position of the island as well as the territory itself was understood to be quite useful, there were a few wars here and there, however it remained mainly under the Spanish. Now at this point, all of the territories that belong to the Spanish are put together and called Nueva Granada. We're talking about Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Panama, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, Suriname, Brazil and Peru. After a few years, as it happens, a lot of these places got independent, and we were then left with the Gran Colombia, which included Colombia, Ecuador, Panama, Venezuela, Peru, Brazil and Guyana. Of course, for some of these, we're talking about areas of what now we know as those countries. And then many of these got their own independence, fully separated between each other. And when what we know now as Colombia state, San Andres Providencia in Santa Catalina became part of Colombia. In 1821, there was the Constitution of Cucuta, which stated that every child that was born on that territory was free. And in 1851, slavery was abolished. These are dates that are important to remember. However, it is also important to remember that just because it is, officially abolished doesn't mean that a lot of racism is not still present. Even to this day, this is a conversation that is important to be had. And especially when you visit some of these places which are so culturally important and they have these ethnicities and all of these cultural aspects, it's important to remember that. During the 20th century, this island became a free port. So for a long time, because of the position, it was used to move, stuff from various places, and some stuff that would not arrive to Colombia actually. Or would arrive, but because of the movement, with a price a little bit higher. One of the things that people used to do, even from my, older relatives, was to go to the island, find a lot of stuff for a very low price, and then bring it back to their cities. However, in this day and age, you're not going to find that big of a change. However, you can find things that are a little bit harder to find in the cities. For example, we found chocolates, some perfumes, that it would be harder to find. So, yeah, these islands are mainly based on tourism. Because of the biodiversity, these islands are actually protected by UNESCO. And they are beautiful to visit, so I highly recommend if you can. Now, if you do visit, it is important to know, hey, what language do you speak? Spanish? Well, yes, but also English, as well as something known as San Andresano Creole. Now, Creole is basically a mixed. So it's an English-based language with some touches of Spanish as well as African languages like the Kwa and the Igbo. So this whole combination of things creates Creole. Now, Creole depends on the place, that's why I said San Andresano Creole. But yes, they also speak English and Spanish, so you'll be fine. Now, let's talk about ethnicity. Remember when I said about all of those movements? Well, you find a lot of people there. Mainly the people that are born there are called Raizal, that you can also call as Afro-Caribbean. Basically, these are the people that were left because not only of the slave trade, but also of the colonizers. This combination of historical facts, as well as the maintaining of their own cultures. But you can also find, very pale people like me. You can find a lot of Middle Eastern as well as Jewish communities. And talking about the Jews, in terms of religion, again, because of that whole period, you had the Puritans from England, you have the Baptist Church, you have the Roman Catholics, as well as Muslims. And you can see this diversity also in the music. You have things like calypso, soca, reggae, but also polka and pasillo and mazurka, and church music. So whenever I think about Latin America as a diverse culture, I love to point out San Andres, because it is so easy to see how, again, the movements of, history and all of these groups moving there throughout the years and because of various reasons have led with an incredible diversity. Also, it is important to remember this because it is important to remember to be respectful. Why do I say this? Just because it is important to always remember that. I'm not saying I heard some things being said during my trip that were not very nice, but let's just do better. And having talked about a little bit of the background of where I'm going, now let's go. Once again, a quick reminder that the features that I took was not exactly planned out, so some things are vertical, some things are horizontal. I'm gonna add some photos, so it might be a bit messy, so forgive me because of that. However, yeah, we have to work with what we have. Okay, so how did we arrive to San Andres? We took the plane at the airport of El Dorado in Bogota, and then you arrived to the airport of Gustavo Rojas Pinillas, which is in San Andres. This is the only airport which was made in the 40s, and it's named after the president of Colombia at the time, which was Gustavo Rojas Pinillas. Now, before boarding the plane while you're waiting there in the area, you actually have to pay for a sort of entrance fee. They give you this paper, you fill it out, you pay for it, then you get into the plane, and when you arrive to San Andres, which is a couple of hours, you have to get in line in order for them to kind of stamp it. And you're left with a piece of paper that you need to keep in order to leave the airport. So in order to get into the plane to go back to whichever you come from, you need to have that paper. Then we arrived, it was raining a little bit. These islands are monsoonic, like tropical monsoon style. The temperatures go from 26 to 29 Celsius, and you have a high humidity. But just a little bit of rain, it stopped, so we were able to go eat. Now, this is basically a typical plate of food. You have meat. We like meat, with a lot of meat in Latin America. You have rice, in this case, coconut rice, which is a particular type of rice from the Caribbean area, and it's quite good. As well as you can see that's basically patacón, which is the plátano that is kind of squished and fried, and a little bit of salad. Now, if you can see up there, you have a Coca-Cola, which brings me to a little tip about most islands. Not all, but it's important to just keep in mind how easy it is to find potable water. We stayed in an Airbnb, so I don't know exactly about hotels, but I don't think so. But anyway, the water that you get from the tap is going to be salty water. It is processed, but it's not fully processed. So avoid drinking it, even washing your teeth, better not. You can go to the store and buy big bottles of water and have it with you. My main point is that when you go to a restaurant or where you buy things, around the island, just try to avoid things that might have been done with water. So, just choose better a soda, again, like a Coca-Cola, or maybe a beer, just things that come in a bottle stuff. I have heard a lot of stories of people that get quite sick. Now, the day we arrived was quite chill. Again, after we ate, we did a sort of quick walking around to see where the store was to buy the water as well as some snacks. And there was a rocking chair, which I had a lot of fun with. The next day, the weather was perfect. It was beach time. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the beach. Like, I have fun for a bit, then I'm kind of done. But these islands are so pretty that you just really want to get in and just look at how beautiful it is. It is crystal clear water. And of course, after just a few minutes, I was already red as a lobster. Beware of the shakiest food cam ever. But I just wanted to show it to you. As you can see, it's so pretty, the water is crystal clear, and it was so funny because there are places that go up and down, so you had to find somewhere to stay, and me with the phone, I was struggling. Also, none of the footage is going to go down with the water, because the cover that I got, like the waterproof cover, I wasn't 100% sure. I have trust issues. So I would always leave it a little bit upwards, so it never went down. But the issue is that while I'm swimming, I'm also having this thing and it's moving. So yeah. But anyway, I'm not gonna apologize anymore for the footage, okay? I think we all got it. Back to the story. After a bit of a morning under the sun and the sea, we had lunch at this amazing Mexican place that had tacos. They were delicious. And on the afternoon, we decided to walk around a little bit and see how the island exists. What I mean by this is that I love to see the architecture, because what I found fascinating about San Andres is that usually you have sort of, the buildings surrounding the areas. However, you could see once in a while a little bit of a small street that goes inside, and inside is where people from the island, known as Isleños, actually live. And I like to say that, especially in very touristic areas. Because seeing the tourist area, as per se, aka everything that is made for the people that come from various parts of the world, it's one thing. But seeing how people actually live, it's just another, and I think it's fascinating. Back to the architecture, I love to see the houses, I love to see the art, which I think is beautiful. We actually saw something very nice, which was an art project made with plastic, recycled plastic that was found at the sea. So they had these pieces and they put it, you have it around the airport, you have all these beautiful paintings, but also there was this huge iguana that is all made in plastic. It was lovely. And also a reminder, quick reminder, not only for the islands, but for everywhere that you visit, take a bag with you and just put your trash in there. Don't throw the trash in the street, please. Just for basic respect of the environment. Also, there is this thing I noticed in Colombia, which is an I love name of a place. So you find this absolutely almost everywhere, and I think it's nice because it's a nice idea for you to, visit and have your picture taken, and yeah. At night we visited a restaurant when I had an arroz mieloso, which is basically a risotto in terms of, kind of moisty rice, but it was seafood based. It was delicious. But also, and most important, this restaurant had live music. They were singing banger after banger. We were so happy. And this is something about the Latin American culture, aka if we can add music to something, we will add music to something. And people are usually going to start dancing. So even while we were waiting for, a food to arrive, people start dancing. They are singing live, you'd sing with them. They were also quite fun. They kind of turned around and were like, hey, happy birthday, and all of that. It was quite nice. And also the place was very nice because then after we finished eating, we went to a sort of separate, more open area. And you had a drink, you have a few laughs, and we also danced a little bit with my cousin, which was very nice. And when we went back to the Airbnb we were staying at, it wasn't far. You can walk absolutely everywhere. Talking about the culture and the music is that people just listen to music on the streets. So some people have a radio, some people have a speakerphone, and while you're walking by, every couple of minutes it's like changing the radio. You go from música llanera even, pop to salsa to bachata, champeta. I mean, it is lovely to see, and people again are just openly there on the streets listening to music, drinking and dancing and just having a good time. The reason why I say this is because while I was there, this is something that I forgot, because here in Europe it is a little bit different. You can have music in a bar and things like that, or at a disco. On the streets it's not that common. So if you are visiting somewhere and you're expecting it to be this very chill place and you're just gonna listen of the sound of the waves, and no, probably not. On the next day, aka our third day at the island, it was the island tour day. The whole island is about 26 square kilometers. Now most people live, and also the tourist area is based on the northern part of the island, which is known as El Centro. However, there's also people under, and you can also find very touristic areas down. One of the usual things that you do is that you rent a car. It's not a car, but I just know how to call it. It's like a cart, like the golf ones. but a little bit bigger, so you can have like 5 people there, and also you can carry your stuff around with you. And that's what we did this day. The first stop in our journey across the island was Morgan's Cave. Yes, Morgan, the pirate, the whole thingy. There is basically a museum that is mainly for kids. It's not that big, and we had a kid with us, so they went in, they had fun. And yes, you can search some of the history. I mean, it is part of the Caribbean. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love pirates. But again, this was more like a museum for a kid. Anyway, in the meantime that the kid was inside, we walk around and there was this dude that had a lot of mangoes, sweet mangoes. So usually people from North Latin America, they know the big mango. However, we have the small mangoes that we call mango de azúcar, sugar mango, that are smallest and they're sweet and delicious. So we saw this dude and this little kid that had a lot of mangoes, and we were like, hey, where did you got those? We want some. And he was like, oh, there's this tree in here. It's just filled with them. We just got them, because that's something that we do quite a lot in Latin America. It was not private property, by the way. I mean, if it was, they had no issue with it because it was not blocked or anything. And yeah, we just got some mangoes. I got inside and I got me some delicious sugar mangoes. I did cut myself a little bit, but it was worth it. Anyway, after this, we went to La Piscinita. So La Piscinita is basically a sea that has kind of like rocks here. You get in and then you have this beautiful playa that you can swim in, and it goes down quite fast. Now, like I said, San Andres is known because of the biodiversity, and because of the crystalline coral waters, it is a better place for you to do SUP. You can do subaquatic sports. You can also do the training there, actually. Usually have to do the whole theory part at home, and then when you go to the island, you do a few hours in which to do the training, so you can get your license card. If you don't want to do that, if you just have your goggles and your thingy to breathe, you can absolutely use that. So this is an area new because of that. You have the rock here, and I have to say, beware of the sea urchins. If you have those kind of special shoes that you can put for getting into the water, I would highly recommend those. If you have kids, or if you're not too certain about the water, because again, besides the rock, there's nowhere for you to kind of stand up. You can ask there at the entrance when you pay, because you have to pay to enter that zone. You can ask for a life jacket. So snorkeling there was actually quite nice. You have a lot of beautiful fish, and as I don't know if you can see, there is kind of a plank there, like a sort of floating device. There you can kind of stand up a little bit and take a breath. There's also 2 jumping thingies. Jumping boards? Yeah, I guess. And in particular, La Piscinita is known because of the statue of Poseidon. Or Poseidon, or Neptune, whatever you want to call it. So the rock is here. The floating thing device is here. And over there, first of all, you have a line that divides. So over that kind of floating thingy, you cannot go. Just don't go. Don't be that person. And closer to this, underwater, there's this huge statue of Poseidon. Once again, my shaky footage looks terrible, but absolutely you can just with the goggles see it. It was very, very nice, and if you are way more used to do that sort of aquatic things, it can be quite fun. Also, remember when I talked about the music? Well, look at this video. This is the vibe of most touristic areas in Latin America. After these beautiful adventures, we had lunch, and I had a delicious shrimp rice. And you can see up there you have again some patacones and a yuca, and oh, it was delicious. There's also a dog there. How cute. Then we went to the botanical garden, which was closed. But we did saw this thing that I was like, what is that? I've never seen that. And I found out later it was breadfruit, or frutipan in Spanish. And I didn't know this at the time, and later I found out basically this is a fruit that is quite used for a lot of recipes. Sadly though, I had no idea about it at the time, so I wasn't able to even try it or ask for any recipe. So that's sad, but next time. We also passed by this Baptist church built in 1844, which is actually still going and it has services, so if you're interested in that, you could absolutely go. And the last place we went to was El Hoyo Soplador. Here's when I actually noticed that there are these plaques, beautiful plaques at the entrance of these places that tell you a little bit about this place and have these beautiful designs. Of course, if I hadn't known sooner, I have searched for them for the other ones, but anyway. Now the whole gimmick, I guess, of the blowing hole is that, you know, you have the waves that touch the rock and there are holes in here, so then the water goes up and like splash. However, I thought it was quite obvious that that depends on the mood, and since the morning the weather was quite chill, waves very very little, so when we arrived we had just kind of like a and that's it. It wasn't amazing. So yeah, but that's normal, you know. Nature is nature. You cannot control it. One thing I was told though from my relatives was that now when we arrive, basically you have the whole area that splash surrounded by stuff, and they were telling me that years ago, ages ago. I mean, not ages, but you know, a while ago. This actually was all open. All of these businesses open later because of tourism, and now it's kind of hidden. But it's free, by the way. Sometimes they try to kind of, oh no, you have to pay to stay here. You have, no, it's free. You can park and you can just go down and look at it and then go back. You're not obliged to pay absolutely anything. That was day 3. That was kind of a long one, but beautiful. Moment of truth, the next day it rained the whole day, so we just stayed home. Basically, it was not a good day. It rained and we could see from the window that the streets were floating, like there was so much water. It was just not fun, and all of the places that you could go or that we were planning to go, you could not go with that weather. So we just stayed home and watched a movie. It was about a phone call. It was a very 90s movie. Anyway, the sun came out though the day after, and we were able to visit El Aquarium. The aquarium are basically 2 tiny islands, so in order to arrive there you got to go to the port. At the port you have all of these different services and you find the one that you're looking for. We found some people that were very very nice actually, and they were like, yeah, we can go, and you get into the boat, and first they actually took us to the mangroves. One of the reasons why it is an island protected by UNESCO. Mangroves are beautiful, and it is fascinating that you have this 7-colored sea, but then they take you inside the mangroves and the water is completely different. It feels like a Nat Geo documentary actually. By the way, the 2 people, the one that was just driving the boat and the one that was explaining, they were both Isleños, and they were explaining to us so many things. It was really really nice. So they were showing us a little bit how it works. They say that basically the entrance that we got in, turned around and went down, is the only one that it is now. There used to be another one, but it got closed because the mangroves grow and we close it. They talked about how this is where a lot of the seafood that we consume in the island actually comes from. Then we go to the actual island. So it's actually 2 islands. Let me explain it. You arrive to the actual port. You get in. Now, before you actually pay your ticket, like before you leave the main port, you are asked at what time do you want to leave, aka in like 2.5 hours sort of, or you want to stay longer. The reason why this is important is because it is limited. People are not just coming and going as they please. If you say we leave at midday, for example, or we leave at 3, that's where they're going to get you. So you have to wait until that time. We just stayed until like midday. We didn't have a lot to do there. You get into this port, you have a tiny island where you have also some restaurants and places to leave your stuff. Because to arrive to the actual aquarium, you have to go through the sea. Between one island and the other, there is this passage that you can walk, and there is actually a big string that you got to follow, but it is underwater. I'm not very tall and it reached kind of here, so you cannot carry with you everything, especially if it's like, you know, important stuff that you don't want it to be ruined. Because when you arrive to the other part, there is a restaurant, but there's nowhere to leave your things. So unless you have someone that stays there put with the things, but it's still not very nice. So take with you just the bare minimum. And when you do that and you arrive to the actual aquarium, it is so nice. Once again, a lot of sea urchins, so no sandals. Avoid sandals. There's not going to be no use there. Shoes. Actual protecting shoes, and still be aware of where you're putting your feet or your hands. Now the water is not very high. You have this kind of levels, and then you cross a little bit of the reef, and then You go into a lot of deep water, but not very deep. Great for kids, great for people that perhaps just want to get a bit of a splash, but they don't want to get fully in the water. But one thing for sure is that if you have your goggles, your snorkel, you're going to see beautiful fish. I was so happy. It was genuinely so pretty to see all of the different fishes and see them getting in, the crevices. And even the sea urchins look quite nice. Also, I saw 2 rays. That was so nice. They were tiny actually, and I wasn't able to film because of course I wasn't. But I did saw them pass by and they were beautiful. We looked a little bit, we swam a little bit, then we went back, they come pick us up. And on our way back, we actually saw a shipwreck. Because the water is so crystal clear, you actually can see it. And it actually is way down that it feels like it is. And then we stopped in the sort of middle of the ocean. And they were like, here you can actually jump, because in this place the sand is actually on, at a reach. So me, again not very tall, could actually stand. But you are still in the middle of the ocean. We stayed there for a couple of minutes. It was very, very nice. We went back home, had a quick lunch, and then we did some afternoon shopping. I got a friend a keychain, and I got me a little bag that I wanted for a while, and also got some candy. Next day was the last day in the island. We walked around a little bit close by home. It rained, my shoe broke. It happens, I guess. We said goodbye to the port and we went to the airport. Luckily, when the plane took off, the rain had stopped a little bit, so I was able to take some beautiful footage of the island from the plane. One thing about Colombia, it is beautiful. And I'm not saying that just because I'm Colombian. One thing about the world actually is that it is beautiful, and if you have the opportunity to see it, do so. I would highly recommend it. It was very, very nice in terms of nature, in terms of people, well, in terms of food and music. Again, seeing various cultures and see how they might interact is always fascinating. And that was my journey to San Andres. It was very, very nice. I have to say that even though the weather, sometimes got a little bit messy, it was still beautiful. Great experience. I was lucky to also be with very nice people, so I had a great time. If you can visit San Andres, you're absolutely welcome. I remember that I said San Andres, Providencia, and Santa Catalina. You can also visit these other islands, but you have to kind of, prepare the whole thing, because it's something that you need to, do beforehand. Don't do it when you arrive there. It becomes a little bit messier. So if you do visit, I would highly recommend to prepare things a little bit better, but also remember the weather sometimes might be not great. So if you visit, having in mind all of these things, remember the water and remember it is beautiful. So if you do visit, I hope you have a great day. Do you snorkel? Because I do snorkel basically, but I would never be able to do like SAP, like go down. I'm terrified of the sea actually. I know it doesn't look like videos that I made, but that's because there were people around me. On my own, I could never. But that's just a me issue. Anyway, okay, I already talked for way too long, so have a nice day.
La verdad es que nos estamos pagando por estar en la